Welcome to Lincoln County, Kansas, and we're going to spend the next couple of days and videos exploring all around the back roads of Lincoln County. I previously released a video about the county seat called Lincoln. Also is also referred to as Lincoln Center, but mostly referred to as Lincoln by the locals, I believe. And so we talked a little bit about, the county seat and a little bit of history there. But now we're going to go out to some of the other places. Most of the rest of the county is very sparsely populated. Almost 40% of the county population is in the county seat of Lincoln. We're going to learn a lot of the history along the way, but a few things, just kind of in general. Kansas was a territory from 1854 to 1861, and then in 1861 became a state. And then counties were kind of slowly organized. They weren't all organized at the same time. And this area was, named Lincoln County in around 1867, but really didn't get organized until about 1870. So there was a lot of things that happened. There was a lot of Native Americans that lived here. There were fights between the settlers and the Native Americans, and we'll go to some of those places during these videos. And but so then it was slowly kind of organized around 1870 officially. So, but the population grew like, a lot of these rural counties did in the early 1900s. And then, as you can see on the chart here, the population has slowly, gone down over time. So we'll continue to look around and find out why that happened in some of the places that used to have population and now don't. There are two roads that kind of intersect Lincoln County. It's 18 going east and west and 14 going north and south. So we're going to explore on the north side of 18, and that's going to be part one. I have so many dots on the map. There's so many ghost towns and cemeteries. It's going to be hard to fit them all in one day. So hopefully we can find some cool stuff, and but it will be a lot of places to try to see here in Lincoln County, which is a great thing. But we are at the mercy of daylight. So we're gonna get started and head on down the road. We're gonna follow the railroad initially because, like a lot of these early communities in the 1870s, 1880s, they grew along the railroad. So the first few communities are gonna be right along the railroad. Our first stop here, this is called Goldenrod, and couldn't find much about it except for that this elevator was built in the 1950s. I don't think there was ever a post office, but a stop along the railroad for a short period of time, and certainly these tracks aren't being used anymore, but a pretty cool first stop just here along the dirt road. Denmark is one of the oldest settlements in Lincoln County, has a very interesting history, and it has some really cool stuff to see here. Definitely a ghost town worth traveling for. So Denmark was settled around 1869, but there were Indian raids all around this area at that time, and many of those early settlers were killed. And then it was Danish immigrants here, and so they were trying to build a church. They eventually did that. They started this community, and around 1875, and it was a slow to grow community. It was, struggled with growth. So eventually they had a post office in the 1870s, but it closed in 1904. And so it didn't seem like there was a lot of hope for Denmark. And then in 1916, a railroad came through just, to the west of where we're at right here. This is kind of the original area that Denmark was settled. And so townspeople decided, well, let's make sure we move over there and take advantage of the railroad in 1916. So they created what was called Lower Denmark. So what we're in is called Upper Denmark, and just down the road, you can see it almost from here, called Lower Denmark. And it's just because I think it's lower, you know, it's higher ground here, lower. You can see kind of the elevations a little bit different. So I'm guessing that's how it's higher in Lower Denmark. And the elevator, or the railroad, the elevator there, you know, that really helped things. And the town grew a couple hundred people, but once again, the depression and drought, you know, kind of killed the growth of the town, and slowly died out. And in the 1950s, the post office closed, and it's been just a small community based around the church, I think, ever since. So beautiful church, some really cool old buildings, and definitely a great place to visit if you're in Lincoln County. I mentioned how this is the post-rock capital of the world, and it's interesting because you can see all these houses and buildings that were built from it, and then there's lots of abandoned buildings, you know, just kind of off, covered with grass almost, and, you know, a lot of times those buildings would be gone or fallen over because they were made with wood or something, but this post-rock is so strong after you know, you get it out of the ground and it hardens, that, you know, you see all these buildings that are still here because that stone is so almost indestructible. So pretty cool. And you see posts all along the road, and definitely a unique thing as you're exploring around Lincoln County. Right here is called Grant. We're in Grant Township, but there was also maybe a town or a ghost town of some sort here along the railroad called Grant. And I couldn't find that it had a post office or anything, but also in this area was a camp that was set up to help the settlers in the 1860s with Indian raids. And there were 4 camps in the county, and this was one of them, somewhere in this vicinity. There's no evidence of it anymore, but it was near the river. It's not too far from here. And so that was obviously, depending on which side of that you were on, it was major disagreements on who should be here. And so the government set up a camp here and tried to help the early settlers in Lincoln County. There's a stone here by the railroad where a sign that says Grant, and it talks about a farm as well. And so obviously there were some important people that were around here, and some interesting history here, very complicated history, obviously, in the 1860s. The only thing on the map is there's a, Pottersburg Cemetery, and I saw there's a post office in the kind of early 1900s, late 1800s, early 1900s. And then I did a little bit of reading, and turns out that this was kind of the center of coal country. And it was at the confluence of a couple creeks, so a good spot to start a town. And at the intersection right to the north of where the cemetery is, there's, I'm guessing, an old school that's crumbling, but still made of the local rock. And so a lot of it is still standing there. But cemetery is small, but very well maintained, and some interesting headstones to walk around and read. So yeah, pretty cool little find here. Potterburg, or Pottersburg as the cemetery says. It's not easy to get down here, but then when you get down here, it is pretty neat bridge to look at. Been driving a while on roads like this and finally came upon something, the Green Valley Cemetery. We're way up here in the northwest corner of Lincoln County, and there aren't any towns, and haven't really even found ghost towns up here. And this says Elm Creek on my map, but somehow it's been changed to Green Valley at some point. Looks like all the headstones are in, kind of back off the road a little bit. You can just once again see all the post rock around on the fence surrounding. You just see it everywhere. It's been a minute since we found anything really cool. Some cool cemeteries and a few, old structures. But here is Ash Grove, and there is a church and a school at this corner. And Ash Grove had a post office from 1916 to 1944. It's near a railroad that's abandoned now, but I'm guessing that the post office started because the railroad came through here in 1916. The church says 1905, so it had a little bit of a history before that. And but then, the post office closed in 1944. The old schoolhouse here looks like it's been closed for quite a while as well. I'm sure consolidation caught up to it at some point, but Kind of fun to find a couple of cool old buildings in really good shape out here in the northern part of Lincoln County. This is where Yorktown used to be located. It was also called Allen Reed, and it was Allen Reed from 1880 to 1894, and then Yorktown from 1894 until the post office closed a couple decades later. There's a sign over here that there was a school from 89 to 47, so I'm guessing it was just right out here somewhere. Well, it has been all day until we have found a actual incorporated town, and we are in one now at Barnard, and the wait was definitely worth it. There's only 64 people in the latest census here in Barnard, and they obviously care about the community because it is very well kept. There's a lot of old buildings, and but it doesn't feel run down. And so that's nice to come and see how they're keeping their history alive, but also keeping it very well kept. So it started in the 1880s. The railroad came through here earlier than other parts of the county. So the other railroad places we were at came through in the 19 teens, and this one way up in the other corner of the county came through in 1888, but they weren't sure where it was going to come through. And so there were a couple different towns that were kind of trying to guess, or they were trying to influence the railroad where to go. And eventually Barnard was where it came through. And at that time, over 400 people moved here, and the population was pretty good for several decades, and it was one of the main, communities in this part of the area. So over time, the businesses left, the schools consolidated in 1966, and that was kind of the end of the growth, and the inevitable decline was happening, and down to 64. A lot of cool things to see. I'm sitting here looking at some different small murals that they had painted and put up, which gives it just some life here in the downtown. But just the old buildings, there is a little restaurant here, and just a lot of things to walk around and see. A couple churches that I think are pretty active, and definitely a great place to stop and check out, and pretty much the only incorporated town along the way today. It was definitely a good one. Not far from Barnard is the Milo Cemetery, and this is connected to what I was just kind of talking about over in Barnard with the railroad. First of all, this is a pretty big cemetery, even though it's called Milo. I'm guessing it's the cemetery basically for Barnard. And there is one building, as I pulled up, there's one building on the left. I don't know if that had anything to do with, any kind of community, but Milo was actually a town a few miles south of here. We're going to go and see if there's anything left after this. But it was like the first town in the area. And, we were talking about they didn't know where the railroad was going to go. And so there was a little rivalry built up between people that were investing in Barnard, and then there was another place called Neely. And the lots in Barnard were more expensive. And the local newspaper was saying to the people to invest in Neely because Barnard was too expensive. And so Milo already had businesses, and so people started moving from there to Neely, a few people to Barnard, but more to Neely. And then the railroad went to Barnard. But actually it went through Milo as well, and it was described as a country trading post in the early 1900s, and had about 50 people around 1910. But haven't been there yet, so this is the cemetery. We'll go down there and see if there's anything left of Milo. We've made it to where it says Milo on the map, and here it says Cram's Corner, and Barnard is 5 miles that way. That's kind of where the railroad went, kind of right that direction, and then it would have gone through this way over to a town called Ada in the next county. I think it's Ottawa County. There's nothing left over here. There's a house down the way. But yeah, Cram's Corner used to be a happening place named Milo. We have made it to the end of the day. Man, that was a lot of adventuring around the northern half of Lincoln County. Saw a lot of really cool stuff. We're sitting in an unusual place right now for the final, shot of the video of part one here. Apparently, I was just scouting around what to look for, and there's cemeteries, and you've seen a lot of those kind of things and little ghost towns. And then I saw on Google Maps it said there's a Missle Silo located here. And then so I looked up online, and sure enough, here's the story. This is taken from the official website. It says, in the late 1950s, as the Soviet Union appeared to surpass American nuclear capabilities, the government scrambled to level the playing field and began building Atlas nuclear missiles. With little concern for the budget, the U.S. quickly constructed 12 intercontinental ballistic missiles near an Air Force base in Kansas. Kansas was chosen because it was outside the range of Soviet missiles launched from the submarines off either U.S. coast. The silos that housed the missiles were designed to protect both the missiles and launch crew from an incoming nuclear blast and allow for a rapid response. The Rolling Hills Missile Silo remained operational until June 1965. Both the U.S. and Soviet Union understood the nuclear capabilities of each country would mean the mutual destruction should one country attack the other. As a result, the U.S. decommissioned the 9 Atlas E, 12 Atlas Fs, and 18 Titan IIs, selling some to private owners and others to school districts and universities. This Rolling Hills Missile Silo is one of the very few that remain intact completely and available for purchase. So I didn't know what to expect when I got over here, and it says, no trespassing. We don't call 911, protected by the Second Amendment. And so I'm like, okay, well, obviously I'm not going to venture down this path here. But I see an American flag waving. I see something over there. It says on the website it's in an undisclosed location. I'm guessing this is it. So, but it is a really beautiful area. So I thought, I'll take my drone up and take some shots of the beautiful landscape, and who knows, maybe I'll just wander my way over there and see what's around. Well, there you have it, the, secret location of the Kansas Missile Silo. Kind of interesting looking. I didn't know what to expect when I flew the drone over there. Obviously, there wasn't anyone around, and I'm guessing could have gone in there, but if it says no trespassing, I'm certainly going to make sure I follow those signs, especially those kind of signs that they posted there. So that's the end of part one. What did you think about Lincoln County part one, the northern half. It was very interesting. It was hillier than I thought, and especially as you get out towards western Kansas, is, you know, much hillier than most people think of Kansas. The post rock, you know, stones everywhere, whether it was on fences or in houses or old buildings. It was really awesome. It's a unique thing that Lincoln County has here. Great small towns and ghost towns and old buildings, and hopefully part two will be just as interesting as part one. And thank you for watching this long video of Lincoln County, and please come back next time for part two. Thanks for watching this video about Lincoln County, Kansas. If you like this video, there are several ways to support the channel. You can donate by hitting the thanks button under the video or purchase Travel with a Wiseguy merchandise. In the description of this video is a link to my website where you can learn more about the channel and sign up for my newsletter. And if you aren't interested in any of that, I'm just happy you took a few minutes out of your day to watch this video and learn more about the history of Lincoln County, Kansas. I hope to see you back for part two. And now on to the outtakes. Hey, buddy. Oh yeah, that's a good one. That'll spin for days.